welcome to the Kong Summit 2020. Thanks for joining me in the session. My name is Gaurav Verma and I'm a principal engineer at NAB. Today I'm going to be talking about decentralizing API design and how we are making the API design process more collaborative at NAB. Hope you guys enjoy the session. So that you guys don't get distracted by my pretty face, I'm just going to hide behind this gorilla. And I'll see you guys back at the question and answer session. So I would like to talk a little bit about who we are. So we are the National Australia Bank, or NAB as we are called down under. We are the largest business bank of Australia with around 9 million customers and 33,000 employees. In terms of our API footprint, we have around 1,200 discoverable APIs available internally. We serve around 17.5 billion requests per year for our north-south traffic with a peak load of around 2,000 transactions per second, and we serve around 1 billion requests per year for our east-west traffic, which primarily is the chatter between the microservices with a peak load of around 100 transactions per second. And for the last 2 years, we have been on a decentralization journey to accelerate delivery. Our primary goal is to enable all development teams, whether they are consuming or publishing APIs, with the tooling and training they need to create, build, and run those APIs. In other words, we want all development teams to be API ninjas. The biggest challenge for us as a platform is how do we maintain the quality and consistency of these APIs being produced by all these different teams with different skill sets across the whole organization. So today I'm going to talk about some of the tools that we have built in-house to conquer these challenges and some of the reasons on why we had to build custom tools. So let's start with a quick overview of the platform. We call it a cloud agnostic SaaS platform for API management. It's a multi-tenanted platform, and you can think of it as something similar to the Amazon API Gateway, but is available on Amazon, Azure, and OpenShift for on-premises workloads. The platform provides all the tools to discover, design, build, run, and manage APIs. And speaking of tools, we've got three main tools as part of the platform. The first, and I dare say the most important tool, is the API Runtime. This is the Kong data and control plane and is run centrally. And as a tenant of the platform, you don't need to care about how to install Kong and how to upgrade it and how do we scale up and scale down across all these clouds. How do we patch OSs? None of that you need to take care of. All that is taken care of by a central team. All you need to do is use the CLI, which is the next tool in the tool chain, and use it to deploy APIs. You just need to define your OpenAPI spec and deploy APIs to the API runtime, publish them to the portal, and the CLI is also used to enforce standards and keep our quality and consistency in check. The last tool in the tool chain is the portal, which is the subject of this talk. So we'll talk about that in great detail in a couple of minutes. So don't worry about that too much at this stage. Looking at it from an API lifecycle perspective, to discover and design, we use the portal. To build, deploy, publish our APIs, we use the CLI. To run the APIs, we use the runtime. That was so hard to guess. And to manage our APIs, we use Splunk. So that concludes the overview of the platform, and let's now dive into how we do API discovery using our portal. Some of you might be thinking, why am I talking about API discovery when the talk is about API design? And we strongly believe that API discovery is the first step to good API design. If the platform can help users find the API they need or they can slightly modify versus starting from scratch, that is a big win for the organization as it avoids duplication of effort. And hence we wanted to focus on API discovery as part of our overall API design strategy. Now, to make an API discoverable, first we need to make sure that it's published to the portal. So as an API publisher, what do I need to do to make my API discoverable? Well, as it turns out, not much. All you need to do is define your OpenAPI spec and add a custom annotation which is called xfacts down. Define all a gateway configuration within that custom annotation. So in this case, we have defined some code and some rate limiting. And once you've done that, you pass the OpenAPI spec to the CLI, which deploys it to the runtime. And as part of the same process, it also publishes the API to the portal. So without the publishers making any extra effort, the API is seamlessly published into the portal. We also capture a lot of metadata as part of this publishing process. So the API version is captured, which team was deploying is captured, which environment was it being deployed to is another thing we capture, what was the gateway type, and all this metadata will help us immensely when a consumer comes to discover that API, as we'll see very soon. So now an API consumer comes along and thinks, how do I find an existing API? Well, step one, go to the portal. So when someone goes to the portal, they are greeted by our API search page. And what you're seeing here is the big API search box where users can type in the title or the path within the API to start searching. Open filters button, which I'll talk about in a minute, and the big API table, which is sorted based on the API title. What's important here is all the metadata that we had captured as part of the API publishing process, the category, the environment, the gateway type, and the namespace, which is the team that published the API, is now available for the API consumer to get to the API thereafter as quickly as possible. Now, as an API consumer, if you want to narrow your search down to a specific team or category or gateway or API status environment, you can do that by clicking on the Open Filters button and filling one of these fields in. So in this case, I've filled in Open Banking, and now I'll only be seeing APIs from Open Banking. So when I'll do the search, it's only going to search through APIs published by the Open Banking team. Onto the main search functionalities. So all you need to do is start typing in the main search box, and the table immediately starts filtering based on the search query and the filters that you have selected. In this case, I've typed in builds, and I now can see two APIs that have builds in their titles. Now, if I click on the first one, I will be taken to a details page for that API. The details page is a classic 3-column layout for OpenAPI spec. And what we have done is we have added a special section at the top. And what users can do is switch between various environments that this API has been published onto, or select any of the versions that have been published. So I think I have an example for another version. Yeah, so this API has more than one version, so you can switch between one of the versions. So that was all about API discovery, and would love to hear from some of you guys on what you guys think about it and how have you guys tackled some of these challenges within your organization around capturing metadata. But now let's move on to the business end of this talk on how we are making API design more collaborative. So here we see all the states an API can take at NAB and the workflow for an API as it goes through its lifecycle phases of design, build, and run. For the purpose of this talk, we're going to focus on the design phase, and we're going to quickly talk about each of the states and their significance. So let's dive in with the draft state. Any new API created is created in the draft state. The only check we do at this stage is the API should be unique within the namespace. And we do the uniqueness check using the API title. The API can contain errors at this stage and does not have to meet the NAB API standards. Moving to candidate state, things get a little bit more interesting and difficult. In order to move any API to the candidate state, the API must be a valid OpenAPI specification and also meet all NAB API standards. Once the API is ready for review, it can now be moved into a needs review state, which gives ability to other team members to review, comment, and request changes to the API. The experience is very similar to GitHub review process. Also, during the review, API champions, which is a select group of API ninjas, can request API changes across all teams. So, team members usually can only view APIs within the team, but API champions can review APIs across any team. So, with all that in mind, let's see how that translates into the portal. As an API publisher, I now want to create a new API. So, I go to the portal, I click some buttons and get onto this create new API screen. All I need to do is fill up the API title. It has to be unique. The version, because it's a new API, is always going to be 1.0. I need to select a category out of, I think, 120 categories we have. If I have an existing OpenAPI spec that I have created outside, I can import it by using this field here. This opens up a file selector and then populates the other three fields. So once I've done that, I hit create and a new API in draft status is born. Now this new draft API that was just created might have some errors. It may not meet the NAB API standards and it may not even be a valid OpenAPI spec. All those errors are reported as part of the editor right up here with the arrow points and need to be fixed before this API is moved into the candidate state. In another part of the portal, all the APIs for a specific team are listed along with all the necessary information of what version they are in and what state they are in, and are they compliant or not to the NAB API standard and OpenAPI spec. And if they are not compliant, you cannot move them to the candidate state. However, as and when it does become compliant, its state can now be changed from draft to candidate using this dropdown. Now, after making some more interesting changes to the API in the candidate state, we are now ready to trigger the peer review process. In order to do that, we need to select the needs review state from the dropdown, which opens up the start review screen. On this screen, you select some of your team members. You can select all of them if you like, but you at least have to select one and press submit to kickstart the review process. So as soon as you trigger the review process, emails are sent to all the users that were selected as part of start review, and they get a link which they can click on to open the review screen. When a user clicks on this link, they are taken to this screen, which is the review changes screen, and there are two tabs in here. One is the changes tab, which is this one, and what you see here is a diff viewer. So when there are two versions of an API compared, you'll see the diff between the versions. The user can then approve the changes or request new changes. And the other tab we have got is the feedback tab. Here reviewers can add comments to the review. If they want any specific changes in the API and they want to comment for the requester, they can do that here. On the right hand side, you'd see the name of the requester who's asked for the review or requested the review. And then you'd see a list of reviewers and whether they have requested changes or accepted the change or approved the change. Then you'd see a list of API champions who have requested or approved the change. A review can only be marked complete if no one has requested changes to the API and at least one person has approved the changes. Once the review is completed, the state of the API is automatically changed to approved, and this marks the end of the design phase for the API. The CLI will pick up the API from here and deploy it to the runtime. And only those APIs are deployed to the runtime which are in approved state or above. That's all I had in terms of making the API design process more collaborative at NAB. We wanted to ensure that we keep our process away from introducing any bottlenecks and make it as self-service as possible. I'm sure we'll have more challenges our way or more challenges come our way, but we will continue our work to improve quality and consistency of our APIs. There is one last thing that I would want to talk about today, and that is something that has troubled us for a very long time. And probably some of you guys would be in the same boat as us. So I thought it's important to discuss this. And the question is that, are we reinventing? So when we already have GitHub and Confluence within the bank and we could buy off the shelf products like Swagger Hub and Stoplight, did we really or do we really want to write a custom tool for API design? And I would want to quickly discuss some of these tools and their pros and cons. So the first group of tools is Confluence and GitHub. We already had these tools in NAB. And what these tools are great at is workflows. So both those tools can do workflows. GitHub, you by default get workflows. Confluence, you can do that via plugin. And that's great. However, these tools are not great at discovery and governance. So there is no way for us to enforce teams to push all their APIs into one Confluence space or one GitHub repository. We we want the teams to run these microservices within their own realms of bounded context, and there is no way for us to control where they push their API definitions and so on. So discovery is nearly impossible in a big organization like ours. And by the same token, governance becomes impossible because we can't have any rules around what those APIs should look like in a central repository because we can't make sure that everyone's going to follow those rules. The other thing that is challenging with both these tools are they are not exactly written to create or manage the lifecycle of APIs. So Confluence is a wiki, GitHub is source control. So even to track simple metadata in these becomes a very painstaking exercise. The other group of tools that we looked at was Swagger Hub and Stoplight. And these tools exist for API design and they're really great tools. So you can do discovery in them, you can do governance. APIs are the reasons they exist, so you can track some metadata in there. But what we really found that they did not support any workflows. And workflows was very important for us. And that's something we really wanted. And the reasoning was that we wanted to start measuring the cycle time of APIs. So how much time does it take a team to create a draft API and then put it to production? And if we could measure the time effectively using tools, and we found out that a specific team is taking too long to design an API or too long to build an API, we can send help their way or they can ask us for help. But we would have concrete data on, okay, this is where they are struggling or they need help in. So workflows was really important for us. The other thing we found was these could not track metadata like environments, teams, categories. We had a lot of them. So yeah, they couldn't track that sort of metadata and they couldn't detect breaking changes. So if teams or someone by mistake changed a path and pushed the same version of the OpenAPI spec, they wouldn't push back saying, oh, hey, you should probably want bump up the version. And we found that some teams were doing that. So we really wanted to make sure that that does not happen. So when we thought through all that, we decided to build custom. And the benefits are obvious, right? We get the best of both the worlds. We could do workflows, governance, discovery, APIs are the centerpiece. We can now track metadata, we can detect breaking changes. We could do all of those in a custom built product. That's obvious. But what's more exciting for us is we could use and apply the same principles for an event registry that would be used to discover asynchronous events using the new async API. We'd also want to extend this to a model registry where the API design experience will start from actually designing your models first. And the same could be in future extended to Avro schema, protobufs, and so on. So that's the primary reason for us building this custom. We saw a lot of benefit for APIs, but then we also saw benefits that would help us conquer the challenges in future. That's all I had to talk about today. I hope you guys enjoyed the session. These are all my digital coordinates, so feel free to find me. NAB also has a Medium blog. Feel free to explore that. Thank you once again for joining.